Aren't you supposed to be traveling with my husband this week? I asked, my coffee cup frozen halfway to my lips. The man standing in front of me at the coffee shop smiled, and something in that smile made my stomach drop. He was undeniably handsome, the kind of handsome that made you notice him even in a crowded room. Dark hair, sharp jawline, and eyes that seemed to see right through whatever polite mask you wore. I had met him twice before at company events, always at my husband's side, always in passing. His name was Ethan, and he worked in the same department as my husband at Crestview Realty, a commercial real estate firm in downtown Denver. He's been staying at his secretary's house for days, Ethan said, his voice low but clear. I thought you knew. The coffee shop noise seemed to fade away. The hiss of the espresso machine, the chatter of other customers, the soft music playing overhead. All of it became distant, like I was underwater. My name is Sophia, and I am 29 years old. I had been married to Nathan for 5 years, and in that moment, standing in a coffee shop on a random Tuesday morning in April, my entire world tilted on its axis. I'm sorry, Ethan said, and he genuinely looked it. I assumed when you asked about the trip that you already knew. Everyone at the office knows. Everyone at the office knows. The words echoed in my head like a cruel joke. I had dropped by this coffee shop because it was near the dry cleaner where I had picked up Nathan's suits. His suits, which I had carefully selected for his supposed business trip to Seattle, the trip that apparently did not exist. His secretary, I repeated, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. You mean Lauren? Ethan nodded slowly. I really am sorry. I thought you knew. The way he talked sometimes, it seemed like you two had an arrangement or something. An arrangement? As if I had agreed to let my husband sleep with another woman, while I sat at home carefully organizing his travel itinerary and packing his suitcase. As if I had smiled and waved him off on fabricated business trips while knowing exactly where he was going. I finally set my coffee cup down on the small table beside me because my hands had started trembling. The dry cleaning bag with Nathan's suits hung over my arm like evidence of my own foolishness. I had been such a good wife. I had been attentive, supportive, understanding. When he worked late, I brought him dinner at the office. When he seemed stressed, I gave him space. When he said he needed to travel for work, I helped him pack. How long? I asked, not sure I wanted the answer. Ethan hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. This was not a recent development. This was not a one-time mistake. At least a year, he finally said. Maybe longer. I only transferred to the department 8 months ago, and it was already happening then. A year, maybe longer. I thought about the past year of my life. The anniversary dinner where Nathan seemed distracted. The Christmas where he gave me a generic gift card instead of something thoughtful. The countless nights he came home late, smelling like a different perfume that I convinced myself was just from the office air freshener. I need to sit down, I said, and Ethan immediately guided me to a nearby chair, his hand gentle on my elbow. He sat across from me, his expression a mixture of concern and regret. I'm sorry I'm the one telling you this. I genuinely thought you knew. The way he talks about it at work so casually, like it's nothing to hide. The humiliation burned worse than the betrayal. Not only had my husband been cheating on me, but he had been so brazen about it that his coworkers assumed I was complicit. They probably looked at me at those company events and thought I was pathetic or, worse, thought I simply did not care. Can I get you some water? Ethan asked. I shook my head. What I needed was not water. What I needed was to rewind the past 5 years and see all the signs I had clearly missed. What I needed was to understand how I had ended up here in a coffee shop, learning about my husband's affair from a man I barely knew. The truth was, I had seen the signs. I had simply chosen not to see them. Nathan and I met 7 years ago at a networking event for young professionals in Denver. He was charming, ambitious, and he made me feel like I was the only person in the room. We dated for 2 years before getting married, and I thought I had found my person. I thought I had found the man I would spend the rest of my life with. I worked as a graphic designer for a small marketing agency. And while my career was fulfilling, it was Nathan's career that always took center stage. He was climbing the corporate ladder at Crestview Realty, and I supported him every step of the way. I attended his work functions, made nice with his colleagues, and never complained when his job demanded more and more of his time. Looking back, I could trace the beginning of his distance to about 2 years into our marriage. The late nights became more frequent. The business trips multiplied. His phone became something he guarded closely, always face down on the table, always on silent. When I asked about it, he accused me of being paranoid, and I believed him. I believed him because believing him was easier than facing the alternative. "Do you want to talk about it?" Ethan asked, pulling me back to the present. I looked at him. Really looked at him for the first time. He was probably around my age, maybe a year or two older. There was something genuine in his expression, something that told me he was not enjoying this moment. He had not sought me out to deliver this news. He had simply run into me at a coffee shop, asked an innocent question, and accidentally unraveled my entire life. "I don't even know where to start," I admitted. "You don't have to say anything," he said. "I just feel terrible for being the one to tell you. I can't imagine what you're going through right now." What I was going through was a strange mixture of shock, anger, and, oddly, relief. Relief because now I had a name for the unease that had lived in my chest for years. Relief because I was no longer crazy for sensing that something was wrong. Relief because the truth, however painful, was better than the fog of suspicion and denial I had been living in. "His secretary," I said again, almost laughing at the cliché of it all. "Lauren has worked for him for 3 years. She came to our house for dinner once. She complimented my cooking." Ethan winced. "That's rough." "She sat at my dining table and told me how lucky Nathan was to have such a supportive wife." The absurdity of it hit me, and I let out a bitter laugh. I thanked her. I actually thanked her for the compliment. Ethan was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" That was the question, was it not? What was I going to do? Part of me wanted to drive to Lauren's house right now and confront them. Part of me wanted to go home, pack my bags, and disappear. Part of me wanted to pretend this conversation never happened and continue living in blissful ignorance. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Look," Ethan said, leaning forward slightly. "I know this is completely inappropriate given the circumstances, but you shouldn't be alone right now. Forget him for a moment. What about dinner with me tonight? Not as a date," he added quickly, seeing my expression. "Just as someone who can listen, someone who doesn't have a stake in this. You probably don't have anyone at work you can talk to about this, and your friends and family might not be objective." It was an odd invitation, and under normal circumstances I would have declined, but these were not normal circumstances. In the span of 10 minutes, I had learned that my husband was a liar, my marriage was a sham, and everyone at his office knew more about my life than I did. "Why would you do that?" I asked. "Why would you want to spend your evening listening to a stranger cry about her cheating husband?" Ethan shrugged. "Because I watched him parade around the office for months, bragging about his perfect home life while everyone knew he was lying. Because I've seen Lauren smirk every time someone mentions you. Because I think you deserve to know the truth. And I think you deserve better than what you've been given." His words were straightforward, without pity or condescension. He was not offering me sympathy. He was offering me something I had not realized I needed until that moment. Honesty. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Dinner." He gave me a small smile and pulled out his phone. "Give me your number. I'll text you the details later. Nothing fancy, just somewhere quiet where we can talk." As I recited my number, I wondered if I was making a mistake. Here I was, having just discovered my husband's infidelity, making dinner plans with his coworker. But something about Ethan felt different. He was the first person in a long time who had told me the truth, without trying to protect me from it. I drove home in a daze, Nathan's dry cleaning still hanging in the back seat like a mockery of my devotion. Our house was a modest 3-bedroom on a quiet street in the suburbs of Aurora. The kind of house we had picked together because we thought we would fill it with children someday. That dream had faded over the years as Nathan became more focused on his career, and I became more focused on supporting his career. Now I wondered if it had ever been a real dream at all, or just another lie he told to keep me complacent. Inside, I sat on the couch and stared at the wall for a long time. The house was quiet, painfully so. Nathan had left for his supposed business trip 3 days ago. He had kissed me on the forehead, told me he loved me, and walked out the door with a suitcase I had helped him pack. The whole time, he had known exactly where he was going and who he was going to be with. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through our recent text messages. His messages were brief, perfunctory. Landed safe, in meetings all day, miss you. Each one was a lie wrapped in the ordinary packaging of married communication. I had replied to each message with warmth and affection, telling him I loved him, asking about his day, completely oblivious to the fact that he was not in Seattle but 15 minutes away at another woman's house. The anger started to build then, slowly at first, then with increasing intensity. I thought about all the times I had defended Nathan to my mother, who had always thought he was too charming, too slick. I thought about my best friend, Mia, who had gently suggested that Nathan's work schedule seemed excessive. I thought about my own instincts, which I had silenced again and again because I wanted so desperately to believe in the life I had built. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "There's a small Italian place on Larimer Street called Bella Vista. 7 Ha. I'll make a reservation." I stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. "I'll be there." The hours until dinner passed strangely, time stretching and contracting unpredictably. I tried to work, but the design project I was supposed to be finishing seemed impossibly trivial. I tried to eat, but the thought of food made me nauseous. I tried to call Mia, but I ended the call before it connected because I was not ready to say the words out loud to someone who loved me. At 6:30, I changed into a simple black dress. Not because I was trying to look good, but because getting dressed gave me something to do. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked older than 29. She looked tired. She looked like someone who had been slowly eroded by years of small betrayals, each one so minor on its own that she had failed to notice the cumulative damage. Bella Vista was a quiet restaurant with warm lighting and exposed brick walls. Ethan was already there when I arrived, seated at a corner table with a glass of water in front of him. He stood when he saw me, pulling out my chair like we were on an actual date rather than a strange intervention. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat down. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I admitted. "This whole day has felt surreal." He nodded with understanding. "I can imagine. Or actually, I probably can't. I've never been in your position." A waiter came by and I ordered a glass of wine while Ethan ordered sparkling water. When we were alone again, he folded his hands on the table and looked at me with those perceptive eyes. "I should tell you something," he said. "I've been wanting to reach out to you for months. Every time Nathan would brag about how devoted you were, or how you had no idea, it made me sick. But I didn't know how to approach you without it being completely inappropriate. So, running into me at the coffee shop was convenient," I said. "More like fate deciding to force my hand." He paused. I know how that sounds. I'm not trying to be melodramatic. It's just that I've watched the situation unfold for 8 months, knowing that there was a woman out there who deserved to know the truth and feeling helpless to do anything about it. I took a sip of wine when it arrived, letting the warmth spread through my chest. "Tell me everything," I said. "I need to know everything." Ethan's expression grew serious. "Are you sure? Some of it is hard to hear. I've spent years not knowing things that apparently everyone else knew. I'm done being protected from the truth." He took a deep breath and began to talk. He told me about the way Nathan and Lauren behaved at the office, barely hiding their relationship. He told me about the inside jokes, the lingering touches, the way they left together almost every evening. He told me about a company retreat 6 months ago where they had shared a room, and how Nathan had laughed when someone asked about me, saying that what I did not know could not hurt me. Each revelation was a knife. But I did not ask him to stop. I needed to hear it. I needed to understand the full scope of the betrayal so that when I finally confronted Nathan, I would not waver. I would not let him gaslight me into thinking I was overreacting. "There's one more thing," Ethan said, his voice dropping. "And this is the part that really made me want to warn you." I braced myself. "What?" "Lauren is pregnant. She told the office last week. She's keeping it quiet for now, but it's going to come out eventually." He paused, watching my face. "I'm sorry. I know that's a lot to take in." I set down my wine glass very carefully because my hands were shaking again. Pregnant. Nathan's mistress was pregnant. The man who had spent 3 years telling me he was not ready for children had gotten another woman pregnant. "Sophia." Ethan's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Are you okay?" I was not okay. But somehow, in that moment, I felt a strange clarity descend. This was it. This was the truth I needed. There was no going back now. No possibility of reconciliation. No way to pretend this could be fixed. My husband had not just betrayed me. He had built an entirely separate life, one that was about to expand in ways that made my presence in his life completely obsolete. "I need to know one more thing," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Why did you care? You barely know me. Why did any of this matter to you?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Because 3 years ago, I found out my fiancé was cheating on me and no one told me. Everyone knew, and no one said a word. I had to find out by walking in on them." He met my eyes. "I swore I would never let someone else go through that kind of blindside if I could help it. You deserve to find out from someone who would tell you gently, not from catching them in the act." In that moment, sitting across from this man who had just handed me the most painful gift of my life, I realized something. He was not just telling me the truth because he felt morally obligated. He was telling me because he understood, on a deeply personal level, what it meant to be the last one to know. And that understanding made him the only person in the world I wanted to be with right then. Dinner with Ethan lasted 3 hours. The food was excellent, though I barely tasted it. We talked about everything and nothing. His past engagement, my marriage, the strange circumstances that had brought us together at that coffee shop. By the time we left the restaurant, I felt like I had known him for years rather than hours. "Thank you," I said as he walked me to my car. "For telling me. For dinner. For not treating me like I'm fragile." "You're not fragile," he said. "Fragile people don't sit through 3 hours of painful truths and come out the other side with their composure intact. You're stronger than you think." I wanted to believe him. Standing there in the parking lot with the cool April air on my skin and the weight of my shattered marriage pressing down on me, I desperately wanted to believe that I was strong enough to handle what came next. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to confront him the second he walks through the door. Part of me wants to be gone before he gets back." Ethan nodded. "Whatever you decide, make sure it's for you, not for him, not to make a point." but because it's what you need. I drove home in silence, turning his words over in my mind. When I got back to the house, I did something I had never done in 5 years of marriage. I went through Nathan's things, his desk, his dresser, his side of the closet. I found credit card statements for restaurants I had never been to. I found receipts for jewelry I had never received. I found a second phone tucked inside an old jacket pocket. The screen cracked and the battery dead. I plugged in the phone and waited. When it finally powered on, the lock screen was a photo of Nathan and Lauren. They were smiling at the camera, arms around each other, looking like any happy couple. The date stamp showed it was taken 8 months ago. 8 months ago, I had thrown Nathan a surprise birthday party. I had invited all his friends and colleagues. Lauren had been there, standing in my living room, eating the cake I had baked while carrying on an affair with my husband that was apparently common knowledge to everyone but me. I scrolled through the phone's messages with a morbid fascination. The texts between Nathan and Lauren were explicit in ways that made my stomach turn. But worse than the sexual content were the emotional ones. The I love you messages, the discussions about their future, the complaints about me, how I was boring, predictable, too domestic for someone as ambitious as Nathan. One message caught my eye, dated 3 weeks ago. Lauren had written, "When are you going to tell her? I can't keep waiting forever. The baby changes everything." Nathan's reply, "After the Whitaker deal closes, I need that bonus. Once the money is secure, I'll file for divorce and we can start our life together." The Whitaker deal. I knew about that deal. Nathan had been talking about it for months, how it was going to be the biggest commission of his career, how it would change everything for us. For us. What a joke. I kept scrolling. There were photos, so many photos of their life together. Dinners at expensive restaurants, weekend getaways to places Nathan had told me were business trips, a photo of Lauren wearing a necklace that I now realized was the same one I had found a receipt for in his desk. I sat on the floor of our bedroom, surrounded by evidence of my husband's betrayal, and I cried. Not delicate tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere primal. I cried for the years I had wasted. I cried for the children I thought we would have. I cried for the woman I had become, a woman so desperate to maintain the illusion of a happy marriage that she had ignored every warning sign. When the tears finally stopped, something had shifted inside me. The grief was still there, but underneath it was something harder, something that felt like resolve. Nathan was supposed to return from his business trip in 2 days. I had 2 days to decide what kind of woman I wanted to be. The woman who confronted him and demanded answers, or the woman who quietly gathered her evidence and planned her exit. I chose the second option. I spent the next 48 hours documenting everything. I photographed the phone's contents before the battery died again. I made copies of the credit card statements and receipts. I contacted a divorce attorney named Rebecca, who came highly recommended by a colleague at work. I opened a new bank account in my name only and quietly transferred half of our joint savings into it, something Rebecca told me I was legally entitled to do. Ethan texted me twice during those 2 days just to check in. I appreciated his restraint. He did not push for information or offer unsolicited advice. He simply let me know he was there if I needed to talk. On the evening Nathan was supposed to return, I cooked dinner. I set the table with our nice dishes. I opened a bottle of wine. To anyone watching, it would have looked like a devoted wife welcoming her husband home from a business trip. When Nathan walked through the door at 7:30 that evening, suitcase in hand and a smile on his face, I was ready. "Something smells amazing," Nathan said, setting down his suitcase and walking over to kiss me on the cheek. "I missed you." The audacity of that statement almost made me laugh. He had just spent 4 days at another woman's house, in another woman's bed, discussing their future together. And here he was, casually lying to my face as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "How was Seattle?" I asked, my voice impressively steady. "Cold. Exhausting. The meetings went well, though. Whitaker is ready to sign next week." He poured himself a glass of wine and leaned against the kitchen counter, completely at ease. "What about you? Anything exciting happen while I was gone?" I thought about Ethan. I thought about the coffee shop, the restaurant, the hours of conversation. I thought about the second phone hidden in my nightstand drawer, now fully charged and ready to serve as evidence. "Actually, yes," I said. "I ran into someone you work with. Ethan. He was at the coffee shop near the dry cleaner." The change in Nathan's expression was subtle, but unmistakable. A flicker of something, fear, maybe, or calculation, crossed his face before he smoothed it into neutrality. "Ethan, the new guy in commercial acquisitions. That's the one." I picked up my own wine glass, watching him over the rim. "He seemed surprised to see me. Said he thought you were in town this week?" Nathan's jaw tightened. He must have been confused. There are always multiple projects going on. "Maybe," I agreed. "We ended up having coffee together. He's quite charming, actually. We had a lot to talk about." "What did you talk about?" "Oh, this and that. Work mostly. Your work specifically." I set down my wine glass and looked at him directly. "He told me about Lauren. Nathan." The color drained from Nathan's face. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. "I don't know what he told you," Nathan finally said. "But he told me everything," I interrupted. "Everything. The affair. The trips that were never trips. The company retreat where you shared a room with her. And the pregnancy." I watched his face crumple with each word. "He told me about the pregnancy, Nathan." Nathan set down his wine glass with a shaking hand. "Sophia, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. I found the phone. Nathan, the other phone you kept hidden in your jacket. I've read the messages. I've seen the photos. I know about the Whitaker deal and your plan to file for divorce once the money came through." My voice was calm, almost clinical. I had spent 2 days preparing for this moment, and I was not going to let it devolve into hysterics. Nathan's composure finally cracked. "How dare you go through my things?" he snarled. "That's a violation of my privacy." I laughed, genuinely laughed. "Your privacy? You've been sleeping with another woman for at least a year, lying to me every single day. And you're concerned about your privacy? You don't understand the situation. I understand it perfectly. You married me because I was convenient. I was supportive and undemanding and willing to put your needs above my own. And when someone more exciting came along, you kept me around because I was useful. Someone to maintain your household, organize your life, make you look good at company events." I shook my head. "But you were always planning to leave once you didn't need me anymore." Nathan's expression shifted from defensive to calculating. "Look, we can work through this. Couples go through rough patches all the time. We could try counseling." "Lauren is pregnant," I said flatly. "You're having a baby with another woman. There's no counseling for that." Before Nathan could respond, there was a knock at the front door. We both froze. Another knock, more insistent this time. "Are you expecting someone?" Nathan asked. I shook my head and walked to the door. When I opened it, Ethan was standing on the porch, his expression serious. "I'm sorry to show up unannounced," he said, "but Lauren is on her way here. She found out you knew, and she's coming to confront you. I wanted to warn you." Behind me, I heard Nathan swear under his breath. Ethan looked past me into the house, and his jaw tightened when he saw Nathan standing there. "You," Nathan said, pushing past me to face Ethan. You had no right to tell her anything. This was none of your business. Ethan did not back down. She asked me a direct question, and I gave her a direct answer. Something you've apparently been incapable of for years. Nathan stepped closer, his fists clenched. Stay out of my marriage. What marriage? Ethan shot back. The one where you lie to your wife every day? The one where you're planning to abandon her the second you get your bonus? That marriage? A car pulled into the driveway, and all three of us turned to look. Lauren stepped out, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her face a mask of righteous anger. She marched up the walkway like she owned the place. Nathan, she said, ignoring both Ethan and me, we need to talk now. What happened next was something I could not have scripted if I tried. Lauren stormed into my house, and immediately started berating Nathan for not answering her calls. Ethan stepped aside to let her pass, positioning himself near me as if ready to intervene if necessary. You promised me, Lauren hissed at Nathan. You promised that after the Whitaker deal you would leave her. You promised we would be together. Lauren. Not now, Nathan started. Yes. Now. I'm pregnant with your child and you're still playing house with her. Lauren finally turned to look at me. Her eyes narrowed with contempt. You can stop pretending you didn't know. Everyone at the office knows you must have figured it out by now. Actually, I said, my voice remarkably steady. I just found out 4 days ago, thanks to Ethan here. So, while everyone at the office assumed I was either stupid or complicit, I was actually just a wife who trusted her husband. Something flickered in Lauren's expression. Surprise, maybe, or a hint of shame. But it was quickly replaced by defiance. Well, now you know. So, you can step aside and let Nathan be with the woman he actually loves. I stared at her for a long moment. This woman who had eaten dinner at my table, complimented my cooking, smiled at me like we were friendly acquaintances. This woman who had been sleeping with my husband for over a year, while I remained blissfully ignorant. You can have him, I said. I don't want him anymore. Lauren blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Nathan also looked stunned. I've already spoken to a divorce attorney, I continued. I've moved half of our joint savings into a separate account, which I'm legally entitled to do. I've documented everything. The second phone, the messages, the receipts, all of it. My lawyer has copies of everything. I looked at Nathan. You wanted out of this marriage. Congratulations. You're out. Nathan's face contorted with anger. You can't take my money and throw me out of my own house. It's our money, Nathan. Half of it is legally mine. And this house is in both our names, which means I have as much right to be here as you do. But don't worry. My lawyer assures me that, given the circumstances, the court will likely favor me in the division of assets. I smiled, though there was no warmth in it. Adultery tends to work in the wronged spouse's favor in Colorado. Ethan moved to stand beside me, not touching, but close enough that his presence was unmistakable. Maybe you two should leave, he said to Nathan and Lauren. I think Sophia has made her position clear. Nathan rounded on him. Who the hell do you think you are? You have no right to be in my house making decisions about my marriage. I'm someone who told your wife the truth you were too cowardly to tell her yourself. Ethan replied calmly. I'm someone who watched you parade around the office for months, laughing about how clueless she was, and decided that someone deserved to know what kind of man they were married to. Nathan took a step toward Ethan, his fists raised. You're going to regret... Nathan, stop. Lauren grabbed his arm. This isn't helping. Let's just go. Go where? Nathan snapped. This is my house. Go to Lauren's, I suggested sweetly. You've been staying there for days anyway. I'm sure you'll be comfortable. The look on Nathan's face was something I would remember for years. The realization that he had lost control of the narrative, that his carefully constructed double life had collapsed around him, that the wife he had dismissed as boring and predictable had outmaneuvered him. "This isn't over," he said, grabbing his suitcase from where he had dropped it earlier. "You'll hear from my lawyer." "I look forward to it," I replied. Lauren followed Nathan out, shooting me one last venomous look before slamming the door behind her. Through the window, I watched them get into her car and drive away. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood in my living room, surrounded by the detritus of a marriage that had just imploded, and felt something I had not expected. Liberation. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked softly. I turned to look at him. This man who had upended my life with a single sentence at a coffee shop. This man who had sat with me through dinner while I processed the worst news of my life. This man who had shown up at my door to warn me, who had stood beside me while my marriage crumbled. "I think so," I said. "I think I'm going to be okay." He nodded, not pressing for more. "I should probably go, unless you want company." I considered the question. The house felt empty now, but not in a sad way. It felt like possibility, like the first page of a book that had not been written yet. "Stay," I said. "Just for a little while. I don't think I want to be alone right now." Ethan smiled, not the careful, sympathetic smile from the coffee shop, but something warmer, more genuine. "I'll stay as long as you need." We sat on the couch together, not touching, just existing in the same space. The wine I had opened for Nathan sat untouched on the counter. The dinner I had prepared grew cold on the stove. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "What happens now?" I asked, staring at the fading light through the window. "Whatever you want to happen," Ethan said. "For the first time in a long time, that's entirely up to you." He was right. For years, my life had been shaped by Nathan's needs, Nathan's career, Nathan's decisions. I had molded myself into the wife he wanted, never stopping to ask if that wife was who I wanted to be. Now, for the first time in 5 years, I could choose. I could choose who I wanted to be, where I wanted to go, what kind of life I wanted to build. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. "Thank you," I said to Ethan, "for everything, for telling me the truth, for being here tonight, for not letting me face this alone." "You're not alone," he said simply. "And you don't have to thank me for being a decent person. That should be the baseline, not the exception." I looked at him then, really looked at him, at the kindness in his eyes, at the way he had put himself in an uncomfortable position simply because he believed I deserved the truth, at the way he was sitting beside me now, asking nothing, expecting nothing, simply offering his presence. "Ethan," I said, "would you like to have dinner with me? I made enough for 2, and it would be a shame to waste it." He smiled. "I would like that very much." We moved to the kitchen together, reheating the food that was meant to be a lie and turning it into something honest. As we sat down to eat, I realized that this was not the ending of my story. It was the beginning of something new, something I had not known I needed until it arrived. The divorce proceedings moved faster than I expected. Rebecca, my attorney, was a force of nature, sharp, strategic, and utterly unimpressed by Nathan's attempts to minimize his betrayal. The evidence I had gathered proved invaluable. The second phone, the messages, the receipts, all of it painted a clear picture of a man who had systematically deceived his wife for years while building a secret life with another woman. Nathan hired his own lawyer, a slick man named Marcus, who tried to argue that marital misconduct should not affect the division of assets. Rebecca demolished that argument with surgical precision, presenting the documented timeline of Nathan's affair, his financial deceptions, and his explicit plans to leave me only after securing his bonus. She highlighted the messages where Nathan had called me boring and domestic, where he had laughed about my ignorance, where he had planned his exit strategy with cold calculation. The Whitaker deal closed 2 weeks after Nathan moved out. His commission was substantial, but Rebecca ensured that I received my fair share. Nathan protested, claiming that I had not contributed to his career success. The judge reminded him that I had supported his career for 5 years, maintaining the household, attending functions, and sacrificing my own professional opportunities so that he could focus on climbing the corporate ladder. Your wife's contributions to this marriage were considerable, the judge said during one of our hearings. The fact that you chose to repay her devotion with infidelity does not diminish her claim to the marital assets. If anything, the evidence of your deliberate deception strengthens her position. I kept the house. It felt strange at first, living alone in a space that had been designed for 2 people who no longer existed, at least not as a couple. But gradually, I began to reclaim it. I repainted the bedroom in shades of blue and gray, colors Nathan had always vetoed because he preferred beige. I converted his home office into a studio for my design work, filling it with natural light and inspiration boards. I adopted a cat, a scruffy orange tabby named Milo, who had been living in the shelter for 3 years because nobody wanted an older cat with a crooked tail and a tendency to knock things off tables. Ethan and I continued to see each other, though we were careful to keep things slow. He understood that I needed time to process the end of my marriage before jumping into anything new. We had coffee together most mornings, sometimes at the same shop where he had first told me the truth. We had dinner together several times a week, exploring restaurants around Denver that I had never tried, because Nathan had always preferred the same few places and complained when I suggested anything different. "This is nice," I said one evening, sitting across from Ethan at a tiny Thai restaurant in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. The walls were decorated with string lights and vintage travel posters, and the air smelled like lemongrass and ginger. The food was unlike anything Nathan would have ordered, complex and flavorful and adventurous. "The food or the company?" Ethan asked with a smile that had become increasingly familiar over the past weeks. "Both," I admitted. "All of it. Being able to try new things, not having to justify my choices, not walking on eggshells wondering if I was going to say something wrong or suggest something he would dismiss." Ethan's expression softened with understanding. "You shouldn't have had to walk on eggshells in the first place. That's not what a marriage is supposed to be. I know that now." I took a sip of my Thai iced tea, savoring the sweetness. It's funny how easy it is to normalize dysfunction when you're living inside it. I spent so long trying to be the perfect wife that I forgot to notice whether I was actually happy. I forgot to ask myself if this was what I wanted or just what I had settled for. "Are you happy now?" he asked, his eyes meeting mine across the table. I considered the question seriously. 3 months had passed since the confrontation in my living room. The divorce was nearly finalized. My work was thriving. I had taken on several new clients and was finally building the portfolio I had always dreamed of creating. I had reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my marriage, friends who had quietly wondered what happened to me but never wanted to interfere. I was sleeping better, eating better, laughing more often. "I think I'm getting there," I said honestly. "Some days are harder than others. But yes, I think I'm happy. Or at least I'm starting to remember what happy feels like after years of forgetting." Ethan reached across the table and took my hand. It was the first time he had touched me with any kind of romantic intention since that first dinner after the coffee shop. I did not pull away. His hand was warm and steady, and something about the contact felt like coming home. "I'm glad," he said simply. "You deserve to be happy. You deserve someone who sees how remarkable you are and never lets you forget it." The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in late July. I signed the papers in Rebecca's office, my hands steady, my heart surprisingly light. When it was over, Rebecca shook my hand and told me I had handled the whole situation with remarkable grace and strategic intelligence. Most people in your position would have crumbled, she said. They would have let their emotions override their judgment, made rash decisions, given their cheating spouse ammunition to use against them. You didn't. You gathered evidence, protected your interests, and stood your ground through every attempt he made to manipulate the situation. That takes real strength. I thought about her words as I left the office and stepped into the summer sunshine. Strength? Was that what this was? It did not feel like strength at the time. It felt like survival. Like putting one foot in front of the other because the alternative was lying down and letting Nathan's betrayal destroy me completely. Ethan met me for lunch to celebrate. Though celebrate seemed like a strange word for the end of a marriage, we went to a rooftop bar with a view of the city skyline, the summer sun warm on our skin, and a gentle breeze carrying the sounds of the city below. "How do you feel?" he asked once we had ordered drinks and settled into our seats with the cityscape spread before us. "Free," I said without hesitation. That's the word that keeps coming to mind. Free. Like I've been carrying a weight I didn't know I was carrying, and now it's finally gone. "Good," Ethan said, his smile genuine and warm. "That's exactly how you should feel." We talked for hours that afternoon, long after lunch had ended and the sun had begun its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold that reflected off the downtown buildings. Ethan told me about his own recovery from betrayal, how it had taken him years to trust anyone again, how he had thrown himself into work to avoid dealing with the pain. I told him about my fears, my hopes, the life I was beginning to imagine for myself now that I was no longer bound to someone else's expectations and limitations. "I never thanked you properly," I said, as the sky continued its transformation into evening, "for telling me the truth that day at the coffee shop, for giving me the information I needed to take control of my life instead of continuing to live a lie." "You don't need to thank me," Ethan replied, his voice soft but certain. "I did what anyone with a conscience would have done." "No," I said firmly, needing him to understand. "You didn't." Everyone else at that office knew what was going on between Nathan and Lauren, and no one said a word to me. They watched me at company events, smiled at me, made small talk, all while knowing my husband was making a fool of me. "You were the only one who thought I deserved to know the truth. That matters more than you realize." Ethan was quiet for a moment, looking out at the skyline. "I've been thinking," he said finally, turning back to face me, "about what comes next for us. I mean, about where this goes from here." My heart beat a little faster at his words. "What have you been thinking?" "I know we've been taking things slow, and I respect that completely. The last thing I want is to be a rebound or a coping mechanism or someone you turn to just because your marriage ended." He met my eyes, his gaze steady and sincere. "But I also know what I feel when I'm with you. I feel like I've been waiting for you without knowing it. Like running into you at that coffee shop was the best accident of my entire life." I thought about the past 4 months. The coffees, the dinners, the long conversations that stretched into the night. The way Ethan listened to me, really listened, without trying to fix things or dismiss my feelings or make it about himself. The way he made me laugh. The way he challenged me intellectually. The way he treated me like an equal partner rather than an accessory to his life. "I feel it too," I admitted, the words coming more easily than I expected. "I've been scared to say it because everything happened so fast. One day I was married and the next I was having coffee with my husband's coworker. And now here we are on a rooftop watching the sunset." "Here we are?" Ethan agreed with a small smile. "And I'm grateful for every moment of it." I'm grateful I was at that coffee shop. I'm grateful I had the courage to tell you the truth. And I'm grateful you gave me a chance to know you instead of walking away. He reached across the table and took my hand again. And this time I laced my fingers through his, holding on. So what do we do now? I asked, looking at our intertwined hands. Whatever we want, he said, squeezing my hand gently. That's the beauty of it. For the first time in a long time, we both get to decide exactly what comes next. For the first time in years, the future felt like possibility rather than obligation. I looked at Ethan across the table, this man who had changed my life with a single conversation, and I allowed myself to imagine what that future might look like. And for once, it looked bright. A year passed, then another. Ethan and I built something together. Slowly, deliberately, with all the care and intention that my marriage to Nathan had lacked. We moved in together after 18 months into a new apartment that was ours from the start, untainted by old memories or someone else's preferences. I sold the house that Nathan and I had shared. It felt like shedding an old skin, letting go of the last physical reminder of a life that no longer fit who I had become. The money went into savings, into travel to places I had always wanted to see, into a small cabin by a lake that Ethan and I visited whenever we needed to escape the city and reconnect with each other. My career flourished in ways I had never imagined possible when I was married to Nathan. I had left the marketing agency and started my own design consultancy, working with clients who valued creativity over conformity and appreciated my unique vision. It was risky, but Ethan supported me completely, just as I supported him when he decided to leave Crestview Realty and take a position at a smaller firm where ethics were valued over profits and people were treated like human beings rather than resources to be exploited. We got married on a spring afternoon, 2 years after that fateful encounter at the coffee shop. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and family, held in a garden with the scent of blooming flowers filling the air and the promise of new beginnings all around us. My mother cried happy tears. Mia gave a toast that made everyone laugh and then made everyone cry. Ethan looked at me like I was the only person in the world, and for once in my life, I believed it. I love you, he said as we exchanged vows, his voice steady and sure. I loved you the moment I saw you at that coffee shop looking lost and holding dry cleaning for a man who didn't deserve you. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel lost again. I'm going to spend the rest of my life being worthy of the trust you've placed in me. I looked at him, this man who had given me truth when everyone else gave me lies, and I felt something I had not felt in years. Complete certainty. This was right. This was where I was supposed to be. This was the life I was meant to live. I love you too, I said, my voice trembling with emotion. Thank you for being brave enough to tell me what no one else would. Thank you for waiting while I figured out who I wanted to be. Thank you for choosing me every single day and making me feel like that choice is the easiest one you've ever made. The reception was joyful in a way my first wedding had never been. There was laughter and dancing and the kind of warmth that comes from being surrounded by people who genuinely wished us well and celebrated our happiness without hidden agendas or false smiles. When Ethan took my hand for our first dance, I leaned into him and let myself feel completely, utterly, unreservedly happy. No regrets, he whispered in my ear as we swayed together under the string lights. Not a single one, I replied with absolute conviction, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. Every painful moment of my divorce, every tear I had shed in the dark of my empty bedroom, every sleepless night wondering how I had been so blind, all of it had led me here, to this dance floor, to this man, to this new beginning that was better than anything I could have imagined. The consequences of Nathan's choices had caught up with him by then, as consequences always do for those who build their lives on lies. The affair with Lauren had not survived the stress of an unplanned pregnancy and his financial fallout from the divorce. She left him 6 months after their daughter was born, citing his inability to commit, his wandering eye, and his constant complaints about child support and responsibility. Apparently, he had already started pursuing another woman at work, unable to learn from his mistakes. Without my support and stability, without the devoted wife managing his household and propping up his fragile ego, Nathan's career stalled completely. He was passed over for promotions, his reputation permanently tarnished by the scandal of his affair becoming office gossip that followed him from job to job. The last I heard, he had left Denver entirely and was working at a smaller company in another city, paying child support for a daughter he rarely saw and alimony that took a substantial portion of his reduced income. Lauren, meanwhile, struggled as a single mother, having sacrificed her own career advancement for a man who had promised her the world and delivered nothing but disappointment and broken promises. The woman who had smirked at the mention of my name, who had eaten at my table and complimented my cooking while sleeping with my husband, now worked overtime just to make ends meet. Her dreams of a glamorous life with Nathan evaporated like morning fog under harsh sunlight. Standing now in the glow of my wedding reception, watching Ethan laugh with my friends and family, surrounded by love and joy and the promise of a beautiful future, I thought about the woman I had been 3 years ago. The woman who had stood in a coffee shop clutching dry cleaning for a husband who was betraying her with every breath. Completely unaware that her entire life was built on a foundation of lies. I wished I could reach back through time and tell her that everything would be okay. More than okay. It would be extraordinary. I wished I could tell her that the worst moment of her life was actually the beginning of something beautiful. That sometimes the people who break us apart are accidentally setting us free. That the right person will not just love you. They will tell you the truth even when it is hard, stand beside you in the most difficult moments, and choose you every single day without hesitation or regret. Looking back on my journey from betrayed wife to a woman who had reclaimed her life, rebuilt her career, and found genuine love built on honesty and mutual respect, I understood something profound. My revenge was never about making Nathan suffer. My revenge was my own happiness, bright and undeniable, built on a foundation of truth and courage and the willingness to start over when everything I thought I knew turned out to be a carefully constructed lie.